I have to tell you that I actually wrote another novel before that, and it was very experimental. And I think my decision to write a very simple, clean narrative line was all about getting published, and it just worked perfectly. It's a tip. But I must say that as my writing career progressed, it was also a great relief to get back to more fooling around in narrative terms. So I'm going to read from near the beginning of my book, Brain Fever, another book in which I can see all the problems all too clearly, but nonetheless is very dear to my heart. There's a very corny premise here, and that is that Mary Faith ultimately marries the boy next door, who is a 40-something philosophy professor, adjunct professor, occasionally employed at the local university, who's had a number of nervous breakdowns. And the narrative strategy of that first book, Due East, was that Mary Faith's first-person voice alternated with the third-person voice of her father, the third person suggesting, of course, the distance of a man from the experience of pregnancy. This story is told in a man's voice almost all the way through, with a few little intrusions from a female voice. But I found that just a wonderful, creepy experience to climb into a man's body every day. So here we go. This chapter is called Day 3 of a 40-day nervous breakdown, Holy Saturday. The next day was pure due east spring, bright and dark by turns. The clouds were purple-tinged, puffy. I woke at noon, refreshed, abashed, hard-pressed to believe that 2 nights in a row I had flirted with madness. Another setback, another aberration. But wasn't my stripping down naked a thing any man might do, facing evil and his own violent impulses? It's a terrible thing to doubt your sanity when you've been years earning it back. Next year, Mary Faith's car was gone. She'd be out at the Piggly Wiggly, but I made my way over there to rap on the kitchen door for Jesse. I could see him inside at the breakfast table wearing his sleeping clothes, an Arrested Development t-shirt, and those boxer shorts printed with scenic vistas in neon colors. He looked up when he saw me knocking on the glass pane, and then he looked back down into his cereal bowl without a change in his expression or a move toward the door. I can be patient. He is 11 years old. Jesse. He could hear me perfectly well through the glass, but kept his mouth set mean and his head set down. He has black curls that grown women find angelic, the bane of his existence in this era of skinheads and lost childhood. He was the first kid in Dewey, South Carolina, to try a bi-level haircut, but it didn't turn out, what with his curls. I got that opening number polished up. Got an idea for a scat song. He chewed harder. I can't be all that patient. Open up, for the love of Mike. I happen to know he finds for the love of Mike quaint. He mutters these expressions after me. I rattled the doorknob and discovered it was unlocked all along. I've warned Mary Faith about the times we live in, but since she lives in a permanent cloud of optimism and faith that technology will solve our problems, she's not paid me any mind regarding personal safety. I went on in. He did not so much look up, but he was muttering, for the love of Mike. Jump in Jehoshaphat. Jump in Jehoshaphat. Oh man, I said. Talking to him, I felt completely sane. I was completely sane. You're still pissed. Watch your language, he said. The milk ran down his chin. At least I approach conversation as a two-way street. At least I do not mimic my elders under my breath and then reprimand them with my mouth full. He chewed down his Captain Crunches slowly as is humanly possible. Vengeance led me to plot how quickly this boy would be on a diet of low-fat granola once I signed those adoption papers. Come Jess, let's work a little today. He gave me a look out of dark eyes and narrow cheeks. All right. I was willing to make myself a fool for this boy. That is, I am a fool for this boy. Always have been. Would admit this to anyone except this boy's mother, who might think, who knows. She sees. I sang him his first completed number, words mostly by Rappel, music mostly by Rooney. I got me a mutt by the name of Clover, can't get him to sing or dance or roll over. He's known around here as a champion loafer. If he ain't lying on the chair, then he's lying on the sofa. I admit I was corning it up some, doing a little Tony Bennett's finger snapping. Jessie said, oh, dip. It's not dip, it's fat. It's real fat, babe. Then I did a fool for you imaginary electric guitar thing. Fat, he said under his breath. But we were spared a scene. His mother's car pulled into the driveway and he jumped to give her a hand with the bags. He's surly sometimes, but he is crazy for his mother. Mary Faith came in, biting her lower lip and carrying the, weight of the world on her shoulders. Clover, who's a big yellow lump of a mutt, roused himself to get under Mary Faith's feet, and she gave him a good nudge with her knee. The sight of her made me saner yet, better than sane. I was washed over with empathy and love. Hey, I said, what's making you so blue? She put down her sack and saw me skulking in the corner of her kitchen. Hey yourself, she said. How you feeling? And I'm not blue. I'm trying to puzzle out some of that Lindy theory. I'm feeling fine now, I said. Just a virus, just a little brain fever. The Lindy theory, said Jess, ecstatic, where all the imaginary numbers go. He knew about inflation theory, about alternative universes, about fractal fluctuations. She talked to him about these things the way other mothers would talk about how you have to pick up your dirty socks. I wanted her out of the flyaway travel agency so she could start applying to doctoral programs, hole up somewhere where she could conjure any universe she liked. I told her I'd follow her anywhere. I said I'd scrub her kitchen floors in Cambridge if she could get MIT to overlook her early education. She was beautiful, chewing her lip over her theory. Her brown hair was twisted up high on her head, tucked in this time with pins. I do not believe in alternative universes, I said. I believe in heaven on earth, which is what I have found me with you two right here in this very kitchen, with frozen foods leaking through the bottom of the grocery bags. They groaned together, but looked right pleased, as they always do. It's been a long haul for her, what with her father laid up in bed a full year before he died, and her son near failing in school on account of grief and boredom and a bad attitude. I pulled out a couple of packages of the leaking frozen food, meaning to help her unpack, and gave myself a start. There on the kitchen counter, tucked away behind the grocery bags, lay a stack of envelopes stamped and ready to mail. The top envelope, written out in Mary Faith's round, sloping scrawl, said, Senator Strom Thurmond. I knew without asking what the envelopes below said. Mary Faith was writing to her congressmen and her state senators and her city councilmen. Mary Faith was protesting injustice in the world. Why did this make me so uneasy? One day, soon after we began keeping company, I caught her rifling through my mail, the letters coming and the letters going. Amnesty International, Pax Christi, White Southern Males for Peace and Justice, Underemployed Intellectuals for the Right Thing, Fools for a World That Will Never Exist. What are you doing? I said when I caught her at it. I felt she was rifling through my underwear drawer, looking to see if I had condoms. Oh, she said, not embarrassed in the least, just seeing who you write to. Don't do that, I said. Mail is a private matter. And I don't recall she ever fingered my mail again, but look what she'd gone and done. She'd taken on herself that letter-writing habit my mother formed so early in me. Mary Faith wrote the fool letters now. For all I knew, she had Jessie writing too. You hungry, she said? I must have nodded. She got her groceries away and fixed us some puffy cheese things she popped in the microwave. Technology is our friend, she's always saying. Jesse burned his tongue with the first bite and overturned his chair in protest. Serves you right, I said. Eating a microwave plastique lunch on top of that bowl of crap you call breakfast. Watch your language, Mary Faith and Jesse said, on the same beat. They did not crack a smile at the coincidence. Sit down, Jesse, she said, and he righted the chair. I will have you both eating macro-ecstatico diets once we are blissfully wed, I said, and they beamed back that pleased and annoyed look. It's eerie to think back on those words. Ecstatico. That is just how I felt, the three of us wolfing down our too hot, too cheesy, too carcinogenic insti-meals and bickering over the use of the word crap in the bosom of my family, in the bosom of my woman who loves her microwave. Mary Faith's father was a mechanic, and he taught her enough that she was able to build the only geodesic dome doghouse in Due East for Clover. She's threatening to build one for us if she ever gets to engineering school. We ate on in silence, two great minds working on important theories and one puny mind working out a double four tune, until I saw Mary Faith was not eating her cheese puffs. She had started chewing on a long finger instead. Now you really do look blue, I said. Besides which, you will injure yourself if you dig into that skin any deeper. I guess I am blue, she said then. Jessie looked up. What's wrong? Oh, she said, something I heard on the radio. Bosnia. She watched me with that shadow of a look she uses when she needs a man thing done, a twisting of the wrench or a heaving of the furniture. But the shadow of the look was nothing compared with the substance of it. Her eyes were pale and full of demand and expectation. Here, Tim, you take care of that for me. I'm worried, she said. Aren't we all worried? No, really, Tim, we have to do something. Maybe we could do marches, Jessie said, like the ones you used to go on. Maybe we could go on marches, huh, Tim? The first civil words he'd spoken to me all day, and they too had an expectant, demanding sound. What do you know about Bosnia, Jessie? He shrugged. They got to see John. Don't tell him those things, Mary Faith. He should not to bear that weight. I thought her face flushed. He sees it on the news. We stared at each other, and Jessie stared at us staring. Finally, she said, we should be writing letters anyway. Now I felt my own face heat up. Tell the truth, Mary Faith. You've already written your letters. They're sitting over there on the kitchen counter. And now you want me to write my letters, letters from Due East, South Carolina that will stop suffering around the globe. Don't joke now. I can't help but think we have to do the airstrikes. She knows what I think about airstrikes. My mother taught me to read with War Resisters League pamphlets for my primers. It's like the Holocaust, she said. Don't throw that term around. It has a precise meaning. I'm not using it imprecisely. I didn't say it was the Holocaust. I said it was like the Holocaust, the ethnic cleansing, our standing by, doing nothing. She watched me harder, and Jessie watched her watch me. We should be sending telegrams, Tim. We should be doing something. I got the distinct impression she meant me, not we. She'd already done her bit, her stack of letters. I rose from the table and knew without seeing my reflection that my lips were white. That's right, Mary Faith. Why don't you write you some telegrams? Emphasis on you. And just like that, after that brief exchange regarding Bosnia and Herzegovina, I threw my paper napkin down on my artificial food and I stormed out of the house of the only two people I am absolutely certain I will always and unequivocally love. People who sit around the kitchen table on a Saturday afternoon and can't eat for worry. Let me put this in context. When I was still an undergraduate, this was years before the big breakdown, back in the days when my hallucinations were exclusively chemical and always intended. I got the heebie-jeebies without benefit of drugs, just pure heebie-jeebies one day. Woke up scared, stayed scared. After a while, I was scaring my roommate too, who took it upon himself to escort me to a school psychiatrist. One of those doctors Columbia University had designated to take away fear and trembling and dread and longing. I had one session with the man, one part of a session. I told him a dream. I'd been dreaming the dream every night for 6 nights, and I was afraid to sleep for fear that the dream would explode on the 7th. I'd been up for days. The dream was this. A plane crashed in the Due East River, not a block from my house. I was the only one home. No family in my house, no neighbors on the street, not another soul on the point. I made my way down to the river, and there was the wreckage wedged in the marsh between water and land. People lay trapped, flames licking up around them, limbs severed, faces blown away, no one but me to help them. I ran toward them, but I couldn't bear to look on their misery. I stopped. I made to run away. They called to me. That is where I always woke up. I was planning to flee, and they called to me. Each night, the gore was colored a sharper technicolor. Each night, my cowardice ran yellower, down to my very liver. I thought I would never sleep again. The shrink said, "Maybe your dream is telling you you can't save the world." I said, "What?" The shrink said, "Where have all those other people gone? The ones who could help? They won't do it." The shrink said, "Is that fair?" It just is. It doesn't have to be, the shrink said. There are other people who can help pull the victims from the wreckage. They better come out of hiding. For one shining moment, I thought I'd found me a clever psychiatrist, one who could get me to argue my own responsibility. But no, he was taken with the sound of his own voice. It's a common adolescent fear that one's called on to do everything, though as one enters adulthood, one must personally rescue everyone else who is suffering, particularly the other adolescents with whom one is surrounded. But the reality is, he had not grown up with Dolores Rooney. He had not discussed civil rights with his breakfast and political prisoners with his dinner and torture with his supper. He had not been raised, as I was, to take responsibility for all the suffering in the world, so long as it was outside the suffering walls of his own sweet home. The reality was, there was no one else to save them. I was there. I had to do it. I stared at the psychiatrist. I was almost in the dream, right there in his office, right in the big, comfy leather chair I sat in. The flames spattered at the edge of my vision. Somebody called my name, blood gurgling in her throat. I stood up from the comfy chair and walked out of the office, and the shrink didn't say a thing. Nobody called me back. Nobody followed me to see I wouldn't hurl myself in front of a car. Nobody ever sent me a bill. I went back to my dorm where my roommate shrank from the sight of me. Shrank, shrank, shrunk. I climbed into my bed in the middle of the day, and I fell asleep in under 30 seconds. I dreamed the dream for the 7th time. I pulled every single oozing, maimed, grotesque body from the wreckage, and I woke up happy before I went back to sleep for a day and a night. Then I was cured and hungry, and my roommate bought me 3 breakfasts, and I did not have a crack up after all. Not that time.